welcome back to TYT. We're gonna do something different here that we've never done before at TYT. We're going to do a forum of different candidates from the same state, but different districts, all running in this election cycle. And we're gonna bring them together, 4 different folks from Illinois. And I'm going to co-host it with Marie Newman, former US Congresswoman from Illinois. So we want to get you to know these candidates. We want to ask them some questions and find out more about them. I'm super excited about it. By the way, why Illinois? Because there's so many open seats in Illinois, and given how close Congress is, Illinois can decide whether Republicans or Democrats are going to control the entire United States Congress. And I love that we're doing this candidate showcase, and I love that Marie Newman put it together. So Marie, welcome back.
Thank you, so good to be here and so excited to hear from these candidates.
Love it, okay. So now let's bring in the candidates, and Marie and I will alternate in asking them questions, okay? And actually, before we do, Marie, I already said why Illinois is so important, and obviously you're biased because you're from Illinois, but what's your sense of how weighty these races are in this particular point in time?
It's really important. So obviously Illinois is a big state. It is one of the top 10 size states, and we are a blue state, and we are sometimes a very strong bellwether of what is going to happen in the upcoming election, right? So these 4 candidates represent what I often call as the new guard, right? Is that they are anti-establishment in the sense that the old establishment ways are not working anymore. I mean, I think that the electorate really understands this. Unfortunately, some of the establishment doesn't understand that. So I frequently call candidates like on our dais today, new guard candidates, because they don't take corporate PAC money. They want to get money out of politics. They believe that everybody should have health care, and that this economy is rigged, but is fixable. Absolutely fixable, right? And that working families, which is over 95% of the country, gets the shaft every day. So I think it's really important to hear these voices, and I think it's really important to hear about what's going on in these races. I remember when I was in Congress and running all 3 of my campaigns, it was hard in many ways. But in this environment, when there's 5 open seats basically in the state of Illinois, and then a bunch of state house and state rep and state senate races and county and all the things, right? It is a crowded time, and making sure that everybody's heard is hard. So this new guard group, it's really important to listen to them because they're our future. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with them today.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we started Just Democrats here on the Young Turks, and we could barely find 4 people who didn't take corporate PAC money in the whole country, right? And now, and these are not the only folks in Illinois doing that, but they're, but we bring 4 of them together in a candidate forum. It's amazing. And Marie, of course, was a former Just Democrat candidate and Congresswoman as well. All right, so let's bring them in now. We've got Keena Collins from Illinois 7. We got Bushra Amiwala from Illinois 9. That is a very interesting race. We've got Joey Ruzevich from Illinois 6 and Junaid Ahmed from Illinois 8. And Junaid, my favorite Turkish actor growing up was named Junaid, so I have a bias towards that. And Joey and the rest of you, I hope I didn't butcher your names too much. Okay, so at the end, we will do a rapid fire. That'll be fun too. But right now we're going to alternate questions. I'll start first. So let's start in the order that I said. Keena, I'll start with you. What made you want to get into politics in this race in the first place?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Cenk, on, and Marie for inviting us. I live in a plurality African-American district here in Illinois, and it is flanked by the west side and south side of the city of Chicago. And too often I saw millionaires and billionaires and wealthy white men, quite frankly, using the city of Chicago as a political punching bag when we talked about issues like gun violence. But nobody was addressing the root causes of how this violence happens. You can't talk about the violence in Black Chicago or the city of Chicago without talking about the economics. So if we are to address those issues, I think we needed people at the forefront who could talk about violence being public school shutdowns, lead in our water, toxins in our air, and piss poor leadership from people like Rahm Emanuel, who was bought and paid for by the billionaire class and corporate class. And so I really saw it as an opportunity for me to represent people who don't come from prestigious political backgrounds. I come from the background of two parents who are Black manufacturing union workers. And that's the political praxis I've brought to this race.
Yep. All right. Taking shots at Rahm Emanuel will always score you points on TYT. Okay, so look, hey guys, since there's so many candidates, we're gonna try to keep it as quick as possible. So let's go to Bushra next.
Yeah, Cenk and Marie, thanks so much for having me today. I decided to jump in this race because for the first time in almost 28 years, we have an opportunity to choose who we want to represent us in Washington. And this is a safe blue seat in a safe blue state. So the type of Democrat that we send is someone who has been born and raised in this community and lived here my entire life. I'm the daughter of immigrants and Trump's biggest nightmare. I've been elected and serving my community for the past 7 years and went on an informal market research tour asking who can we be excited about, and I'm proud to be that everything candidate in a crowded field that brings all of that wonderful traits, expertise, and experience to the seat.
All right, great. Joey.
Hey Cenk, thank you for having me. I'm a big fan, and thank you to Marie for putting this together. So I am a software engineer who is running for Congress in Illinois' 6th Congressional District, which is actually not an open seat. I'm challenging the current incumbent, Representative Sean Casten. One of the main motivating factors for me to get in this race is that this particular district contains the largest number of Palestinians in any congressional district in the entire United States. And I was sick to my stomach watching my country tell us that we don't have money to replace the lead pipes in Chicago, to invest in education, to invest in public infrastructure, while all the while we have money to send to Israel to commit a genocide. And Representative Casten has stood by Israel and voted to send more weapons and money to them at every turn and refuses to meet with his constituents. And I'm also very concerned about artificial intelligence, how it affects the pocketbooks of everyday Americans with algorithmic price fixing, electricity costs going through the roof due to the data centers, and just the moral effect that it has on children and adults as well.
So Sean Casten, for those of you at home, is a candidate who Israel First put up against Marie back in the day, because Marie Newman was so courageous and voted against Israel once, and they were livid about it, and they financed Sean Casten in that race. So if Joey knocks out Casten, that would be amazing, and it would be very sweet to see that happen, at least from my perspective. Junaid.
Yes, hi. You know, a couple of things in my life happened that kind of got me thinking as to how policies can impact our lives. Number one, my son was in the hospital for literally one night and 2 days. Our hospital bill was almost $10,000. I was in Germany once for work. I was trying to talk to this guy, young guy in his 20s. What does your student debt look like? It took me a minute to get the question through to him. Then I realized there's no such thing over here. And at that time, for my wife, we were paying very high interest. And that's the time that coincided with Uncle Bernie running the first time. So that's how it was my first run with politics. We started holding Muslims for Bernie, Chai for Bernie. That's how I got into it the first time around. We had an incumbent who was at the time, 2018, who was all about corporate PAC money. Schaumburg area progressives needed someone who was standing for the right causes, and that's when we stood up against the corporate PAC money. This is my second run. This is an open seat now. First time was against an incumbent. This time it is an open seat. There are 8 candidates in the race. So to bring this time again it's against a failed machine person who is in this race now, Melissa Bean. But there are 8 candidates in the race. The race is between the top 2.
Okay, so of course, whenever you criticize Israel, you get called an anti-Semite. So Janae just told you about Muslims for Bernie. Bernie is, of course, the most successful Jewish politician in American history, and almost all of us, maybe I can't speak for all of us were in favor and fought like hell to try to get him to be president, and super proud of that. All right, Marie, you're up next.
Well, thank you. So Congress is a messy place, guys. I can say that with a great deal of confidence. So because it is messy and you're dealing with a wide spectrum of people, and remember, we talked about the old guard versus the new guard and the establishment. Let's play a fun game called We Have a Great Sweep in 2026. Let's say that we get 35 seats. You are among that group, and you're in, and you want to do some transformative work. You're going there to be bold, right? But you also realize you're with this amazing amount of inertia, a body of people that is just really prone to inertia. Even in the Democratic Party, even some progressives are trying to kind of ruffle feathers. So I'm going to ask each of you to share what will be your approach to make sure that you're sticking to your values and getting things done and doing the things that your district wants, but that you're actually working with these kind of old garden establishments. So tell me a little bit about your approach, and I'm going to start with Bushra.
So we see right now that when it comes to principles, there is no common ground or compromise. If you have someone that's arguing being pro-life and you have someone that wants to infringe on the rights of the LGBTQI plus community, there is no middle ground between that. But when it comes to things such as banning stock trading as a member of the House of Representatives, when it comes to expanding the economy and supporting middle class and having a progressive tax model, those are certain issues in which there could be bipartisan support. And that is what the North Star comes into. But again, bringing back to being elected in a safe blue seat, the responsibility is on a candidate and House members such as myself to push the needle and the envelope. And I'm lucky to not be the first. There are many champions in the House who I would be a great co-sponsor to for the existing work that they're already doing as well.
Great. So I'll go ahead and go to Kina if you want to share with us what your approach might be.
Yeah, we have to have a co-governance style of running these offices. The reason why Democrats got steamrolled is because we can't stop the hemorrhaging of young people, people of color, and women from the party. And it's because we're not giving them the opportunity to build in leadership and grow, and really we run on one thing as a party, and then when folks get in there, they completely forget that. Number two, we can't abdicate our responsibilities as organizers and this role. Just because you're going to legislate and we are holding the purse strings in Congress, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be building up block clubs and precinct captains and really districts like Illinois 7, which by the way, I didn't mention is also an open seat, should be an organizing hub for the Midwest and the Great Lakes. We know that a Democrat is going to win. It matters who that Democrat is. And here's the final thing I'll say, as a little bit of a bold statement, Marie. I'm not going in just giving my vote over for Speaker of the House. If you want to be Speaker of the House and you want to represent the folks in the city of Chicago that are flanked by the West Side and the South Side and places like the Provisos, you cannot take AIPAC money. You cannot take corporate PAC money. And so I think that what Democratic leadership has floated on and what Republicans have exploited is the respectability politics of people who come in and just yield to the party. We want to usher in a new generation of leadership that tells our party leadership and tells the folks in our party, you have to work for it in order to represent our people.
Great, thank you. Junaid, tell us a little bit about how you might do it.
I think it's important to understand who I am. I'm one of the 6 siblings here, youngest of the 6. So I grew up negotiating and dealing with situations. And I have 4 kids. I run a successful business. So a lot of negotiation just about all my life. I think when I'm in Congress, when I'm knocking doors here first, let's start with that. The one thing, even when I am just talking to someone who may be out in the grocery store who may not be on our side of politics, right? But when it comes to baseline issues, we are aligned. The people are struggling. Everybody, regardless of where their policies align. So the issue is really less than left versus right at this point. I think it's at the bottom versus the top. The billionaires taken away. And that's where I think there is a lot of opportunity for us to come together with people finding common grounds. That would be the first thing. Now, if there are certain things that we don't agree on, then at that point, we have to stand up for what is right. Keep the doors of communication channels open. And this is the first time ever that, to my knowledge, Marie, and maybe we can fact check this. I don't know of any political party person like state central committee women Christina Castro has endorsed me. And when I've openly said I'm not going to take any AIPAC money, I think the tide is changing. For the movement, things are heading in the right direction. They're not there yet, but things are getting better. And I think as we talk to the other side of the aisle, we got to focus on common issues that we are having. And then if sometimes we disagree, we agree to disagree and work together where we can.
Excellent, thank you. So Joey, you're rounding up the pack. So tell us a little bit how you might get things done in Congress.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to be coalition builders. And I think Kina hit the nail on the head with withholding your vote for Speaker of the House for Hakeem Jeffries in order to demand legislative concessions, such as a floor vote on Medicare for all. I think that's the first thing that we need to do. And then we can work with Republicans and people across the aisle that agree with us on things. I think Ro Khanna is an excellent example of doing this right now with Thomas Massie to push for the release of the Epstein files. These are common ground issues that are bipartisan support, massive support across the country. We can also do this with Medicare for all. You know, I have a lot of conservatives in my family, small business owners, and I talk to them about how Medicare for all will help their small businesses. They can compete with hiring top talent because they can no longer worry about the question of, do you offer health care? They can avoid paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to the insurance companies for the minimal health care coverage to their employees. They could reinvest that into the business. So these are things that we could talk to and work with to advance legislation that helps the everyday American. Finally, what I'll say is that we need to use our power in Congress to help other people get elected so that we build a voting bloc that has to be contended with, very similar to how the Republicans did with the Tea Party. We must do that with a progressive movement. We must break the unwritten rule in Congress of not helping people run against current incumbents because it's no longer enough to vote blue no matter who. We need to make sure we have anti-corporate, anti-war, New Guard Democrats being elected all over the country.
Excellent. Well said, and I think you're all ready. So I'll flip it back to Cenk now.
Yeah, so my God, how the world has changed. Because I remember when we were running the first Just Democrat campaigns back in 2018, it was just 6 years ago. Well, actually, bad math. Now 8 years ago. Okay, but saying that you would not vote for the Speaker of the House on your own side would have been unconscionable, right? And now, you guys are talking about not necessarily voting for Hakeem Jeffries. Saying anything criticizing Israel would have been unthinkable. And even interestingly enough, working with Republicans, people like Tom Massie, et cetera, if they're coming to the right side, which is our side, you guys are saying yes, which again, in the past, that would not have happened. So amazing changes here and really interesting actual progressive populist candidates here. So my question is about Israel. Now, there's layers, right? So Ro Khanna had a letter that he passed around Congress saying we should recognize Palestine. So of course he was called an anti-Semite, blah, 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 all that stuff, that's very normal. So then Delia Ramirez, also from Illinois, US Congresswoman, has had a no more offensive bombs bill. And then the last layer of it is folks who are saying no funding for Israel, not another dollar. Okay, so let's start with Joey. Joey, how do you respond to all three of those? What would you do? Would you have signed the letter? Would you have joined Ramirez's bill, and would you go farther and say no more money?
So I, of course, deplore any type of hatred, anti-Semitism against any religion or any minority group of people. It's unacceptable, and we need to stand up for it. But criticism of the Israeli government is not anti-Semitism. So I would not agree with that definition. I absolutely would sign on to the Block the Bombs Act put forth by Representative Delia Ramirez, and thank you to her for having the courage to do that and champion that legislation, which, by the way, the individual I'm running against has refused to sign on to. Which only blocks the offensive weaponry, right? It doesn't even take away the defensive capabilities. And finally, yes, I would 100% cut off all aid and weapons to Israel immediately because they have been pursuing an absolute genocide for the last 2.5 years. They have starved and slaughtered innocent people. They should not be receiving American tax dollars and weapons.
Junaid?
Block the Bombs for publicly said that as soon as I win, I'm going to support Block the Bombs. Delia Ramirez is a good friend, and she has endorsed me as well. So in terms of support to Israel, I think it's about time Americans are realizing that we cannot be on the side of a genocide. More and more, the electeds may not be there, but the population is there. I'm talking to people, hundreds of people at the doors. It's it's an issue that people are unanimously. I'm yet to find someone who says, no, I want my tax dollars to go and starve children. So that policy, I think, is more and more populist at this point. It's unfortunate that our electeds are not siding with their own populations. That's the direction this Illinois' 8th congressional district we will be taking and being on the right side of history, and we are going in with that straight up approach.
All right, Kina?
So yes to all. This is such an important topic for candidates to be talking about. In 2024's primary, I was actually the only candidate in the entire state of Illinois that AIPAC actively spent money to oppose, because a month after October 7th, I got arrested with 130 other folks from If Not Now and Jewish Voice for Peace to say we need a ceasefire outside of the Israeli consulate. And at the time, people thought that it was too soon. AIPAC came in and they called me a defund the police candidate because 6 years ago, I called for the abolition of ICE. And they said I was dangerous for my community. What we're learning is that these special interest groups who are coming in and they're actually dangerous for our communities. And once again, a plurality African-American district like mine, that there's such a grave wealth disparity, a 30-year life gap based off of a 30-minute car ride between downtown Chicago and the south side of Chicago. I cannot justify to the families in my community that we do not have money to keep their schools open or have grocery stores, but we constantly have money to go to war. So this is not just a policy standpoint for me, this is a moral standpoint. And before we get to the point of writing blank checks in the Middle East, let's have a conversation about reparations, right? Let's have a conversation about education. So yes to all of those things, and I'm glad that more candidates are speaking out.
All right, Bushra.
So yes, absolutely would sign on to Rep. Khanna's letter to recognize a Palestinian statehood. Seems like table stakes and a no-brainer. Absolute yes would be a co-sponsor to Rep. Ramirez's piece of legislation, block the bombs. And yes, that is not enough. It needs to be $0 of aid and or any type of pennies of our taxpayer dollar that is given to Israel, which is complicit in a genocide in Gaza. And one little caveat I'll share is that I've been elected in Skokie. Fun fact about Skokie, one of the first Holocaust museums in our country is in Skokie, Illinois. I grew up taking anti-Semitism courses and training in high school. The first thing they teach you is any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. I separate the state of Israel from the fate of Judaism, and that actually the conflation of two is what is resulting in the rise of anti-Semitism, which is true and real, but that does not take away from my stances on any of these 3 points today.
Yeah, look, we all respect and love the faith of Judaism. It doesn't mean that a foreign government is immune from criticism because of that. That makes no sense. I hope we all love Turks, but we're also allowed to criticize the Turkish government. So these are obvious things. All right, Marie, you're up.
Glad to ask the next question. I think it'll be interesting for particularly this group. So what I see across progressive candidates is that everybody says, shares a lot of platitudes like, oh gosh, healthcare is a right. Of course it is. Everyone should have healthcare. But then when you start picking at that scab a little bit, you learn that some candidates have a very different vision of, and remember, there can be a short-term strategy that's doing one thing, a longer-term strategy that's doing another. But tell me in specifics, and try not to use platitudes, guys. It just is my biggest pet peeve ever. Try not to use platitudes and tell me about your healthcare proposal. I'm going to go to Kina first.
Yeah, so this was my work that I did before I got elected. I was a national organizer with Physicians for a National Health Program. And my entire job, Marie, was to train 20,000 doctors and medical students across the country to fight for single payer. And so this is, like I said, we have a really strong case here in Illinois 7 about fighting for Medicare for all, eliminating copays, premiums, and deductibles. Because once again, we just got off the topic about building an economy from the bottom up. We just seen people's premiums sky rocket through the roof at the top of the year because this administration has no plan. A 30-year death gap that exists just based off of a 30-minute car ride. And this is wildly popular across the country. This is the #1 way that people are going into bankruptcy, Marie. And so this is an easy talking point for folks. So my stance is clear. Not only do I support Medicare for all, I'm coming in with a coalition of physicians who trained me, right? These are the frontline folks who were speaking to patients that were coming in and they're advocating for Medicare for all. And so that means culturally competent, fully accessible healthcare, Marie, we have a saying, everybody in, nobody out. Whether you are documented, undocumented, your status should not matter. And we have to make sure that we're protecting the hospitals and safety net providers as safe zones so that ICE is not coming in and raiding and people are getting the healthcare that they need. And finally, I'm pushing this more and more. Eliminate student loan debt so we can get more nurses and primary care physicians. But also, we now have to legally protect our providers and our physicians from being criminalized for doing their jobs, like performing abortions. So we need people who are gonna go in on the front line, not take corporate PAC money, call for Medicare for all, really mean it, work in tandem with the doctors and create a safe zone for our providers and for patients.
Thank you, Kina. I'm gonna go to Junaid, if you'd like to talk about your healthcare proposal.
Absolutely, I think it goes unsaid. I'm supporting universal healthcare, Medicare for all. But I think what is important as a legislature is I'll support any policy that gets us closer to that goal. Understanding that I'll be one of the 435 in the House. Working towards that policies, obviously, we'll continue to work on the long-term goal of getting Medicare for all. Hopefully we'll build that majority and get there. But in the short term, smaller things that will get us closer to that. Like how do you stop, pharma price gouging? Donald Trump is taking us backwards, right? How do we reverse those cuts and then expand coverage to all Americans in small steps that will take us closer to Medicare for all? It was what I would be going for. Like in short terms, I'm going to be picking smaller policies that will get us closer to that, working towards the end goal of Medicare for all.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Joey if you want to share your proposal.
Yeah, so Bernie Sanders was who got me into politics in the first place. So of course I'm a fan of Medicare for all, and we need to include eyes and teeth in that because it's ridiculous that they're not included right now in health insurance. I would also echo what Junaid said and say that any proposal that gets us closer to Medicare for all is worthwhile. I do not want to be an incrementalist when I get to Congress. I will always push for Medicare for all. I said previously that I will demand a floor vote for Medicare for all, because that lets us know who we need to primary in the next cycle. Because Medicare for all is a very popular policy position across the country. And so we need representatives that reflect the will and the desires of the base. And we can make these arguments to the other side in a lot of different ways. I mentioned before that it will help small businesses. Additionally, we can work with Republicans and say, hey, how about, this is an example from a cousin of mine in Virginia. He's a conservative. Joey, the way that you get Republicans on board is cover pregnant mothers and newborns 0 to 4 free healthcare, because that's the most important stage of a child's life, and nobody's going to be against it, right? God forbid a Republican says that he's against pregnant mothers and newborns. So that's how you get people on board and you move the ball forward while still maintaining your principles of wanting Medicare for all in the end.
Wonderful, thank you. Bushra, will you share?
Of course. So the short-term plan is simple. It's bring back the ACA subsidies that have been cut through the Trump administration and expand them, and then close the state-level loopholes that currently exist for Medicare and Medicaid. Now, when building through a Medicare for all model, it's the only logical mode for our country to have a universal healthcare system because this infrastructure already exists. You have the same PAs, the same doctors, the same hospitals, and 62% of Americans want a Medicare for all model. And from the 33 industrialized countries in the world, we are the only ones that do not because corporate insurance buys our candidates and elected officials on both sides of the aisle.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen, go ahead.
All right, great. One more question for you guys, then we're gonna go to rapid fire. And this was a tough one. So we're all in favor of getting money out of politics. None of you take corporate PAC money. Now the hard question, how? How would you go about trying to get money out of politics? On this one, let's start with Junaid.
Citizens United, you take care of that first. Secondly, I think this is a non-traditional way. I think what we do is we build. I'm an activist. I'm a community organizer, so I'm thinking in those lines. What we do is we pick the top, and we did this in the past. By the way, in 2022 we did it. What you do is you find your core base of supporters across the country, and then shame the electeds who are taking corporate PAC money, put them on the spot, and call them out from within their districts. Call them out. Someone like, be bold enough to call your colleagues that, hey, are you going to stand for the people when you're taking $1 million from pharma, $1 million from oil and gas? Somebody, when you talk to people, again, I am yet to find someone. I've heard from people that they will compromise. There's no other choice, but yet to find someone from within my district who says, yes, I'm okay with corporate PAC money in politics. They all want to see it gone, but they feel helpless. I think the one way to get there, obviously, getting Citizens United, but I think public shaming of elected officials, this is a non-traditional way. I think we can push people towards the right. And then you start, challenging. When people are not ready to give in, that's when you get the right challenger, and then you support the challenger. And I think that's what will eventually help us get there. And this could be a journey that may not necessarily take decades. It may take 4, 6, 8, 10 years if we effectively apply it.
All right, let's go to Kina.
We have to pass For the People Act, right? We want to put publicly financed, funded, campaigns across the country. We saw how that worked for Zoran Mamdani, right? He was able to speak freely about a lot of the ideas that people cared about in New York City from working class families, and he was able to match the donations that he was raising. And I think that the way that we have poured or people have had to pour money into these campaigns is criminal. It is absolutely criminal. And I also think the fact that we have major corporations and big donors who can shield and hide behind how much money they put into these campaigns is ridiculous. So yeah, we need to overturn Citizens United. And I wouldn't even just say like run candidates. I agree. I think we need to be running single issue campaigns on educating the public about it. But we also need to be training them on grassroots tactics to push back, like house parties, right? Let's go back. If we're saying we want to pull the people in, the money is great, but people vote. And we want to make sure that we're getting those folks on our side and building those relationships.
All right. So again, times are different. I love the shaming of others taking the money, but that is not an answer that we would have gotten in the past. And all of you guys are saying things that are very different. So not different from today, but different from the past, which is what I love. All right, Bushra, let's go to you.
So Junaid and Kina summarized it very well. End Citizens United with this, which essentially turns off any dark and undisclosed money and unlimited money in politics. That also means that, agreed, we should have public financing for elections. Also, I think we need the integration of ranked choice voting across every single state for every single election level. And then finally, for House seats, we need term limits, but also the House term should be longer. I feel like all of that is banked into this conversation because because once you get elected to the House, you start campaigning for your upcoming term that happens too, which I think has a negative impact on legislating. For me, I was offered corporate PAC money the very first time I ran for public office 8 years ago, and I made a fancy video on YouTube thinking it would go viral and people would applaud me for declining that money, and it didn't. But I agree, times are different and it's trending now, so glad to be a part of this wave.
Great. And Joey?
Yes, so shorter election cycles would help this. You don't have enough time to spend all that money. Spending caps on elections would be great because Citizens United is going to take a constitutional amendment to overturn. So that's going to be a bigger lift, not something that can just be done at the federal Congress. But I'm also a proponent of democracy dollars, which is a federal tax cut to every individual US citizen that they can only spend on elections. And so that way we are washing out the corporate PAC money. It doesn't matter how much they bring in or how much they have. The people have money to give to the candidates that they feel represent their interests the most. And of course, I also agree with the ranked choice voting aspect as well. Every candidate gave great answers.
Yeah, democracy dollars, I believe, was from Professor Larry Lessig. He came up with that idea a while back. Godfather of the money out of politics movement. Love it. All right. So now we're gonna do rapid fire. These are gonna be mainly fun questions, but I'm gonna sneak in maybe a political question or two. So let's go the original order that I had. So we'll go, no, you know what, I'll mix it up. Bushra, Joey, Junaid, Kina, okay, each time. So Bushra, let's start with you. Deep dish or tavern style?
Deep dish.
Oh,
Joey.
Sorry.
Tavern style on the daily, deep dish for special occasions.
Interesting. Okay, Junaid.
Deep dish anytime.
Kina.
I'm gonna go tavern. Deep dish is a sick joke we play on tourists here in the city of Chicago.
Oh
Real
my!
Chicagoans know square cut tavern.
Come on,
style
Pequods. You get a slice of Pequods, you can't go wrong.
Okay, I like how that one split the. That's the first question you guys disagreed on. Okay, so that's hilarious. All right, Bushra, pet peeve.
People that walk really slow when we're all walking outside. I'm a public transit person. Biggest pet peeve.
Okay, Joey.
People who chew loudly.
Junaid.
I was gonna say something. I'm gonna change it up. Sorry. I think just not people. I think my son burping on the dining table.
God, I love how honest these answers are. Okay, Kino, what do you got?
I hate a bandwagon fan. Like we just experienced this with the Bears. So like I can't stand a bandwagon person.
Okay, I love that one too because when I was growing up, all the Mets win the World Series. All of a sudden, there's nothing but Mets fans. I never saw any Mets fans growing up in Jersey. They were all Yankees fans until the World Series. Anyways,
Exactly.
Okay. Would you rather, Bushra? Would you rather do call time or root canal?
Root canal. Haven't had it, but I assume.
Joey.
Call time. I don't want physical pain. What?
All right, Junaid.
A call time.
Okay.
I don't want to hurt.
Root canal, but my poverty trauma is leaking out. I hate asking people for money.
Yeah, yeah. That's that's super fair, and no one likes that. It is. That's why it's a tough question. Okay, all right, Bushra, what is a skill you have that voters wouldn't expect?
I don't know if they'll do anything with this, but I'm really good at the toy claw machine, like to pick out a toy.
Oh, okay. Could be useful. Okay, it could be useful for Junaid's son. Okay, Joey.
I don't know. I can dunk the basketball pretty well.
What are you talking about? That's awesome.
Yeah, I won a dunk contest in Valencia, Spain.
Okay, amazing. We hope you dunk on Sean Caston. Junaid.
I can write AI programs.
Ooh.
That's very fancy. Fancy.
Okay, we might be able to use that too. All right, Kina.
Kina's
on
on
mute.
Muted. I can jump double dutch. Really well.
That's my girl.
A hood classic. A hood classic.
You got that
Kina
one on
wins
me.
that round for me. Kina wins that round. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, top priority for you in Congress. Ooh, snuck that one in. Bushra.
Advocating for paid family leave, especially with whether it be sick leave, your own personal mental health leave, caring for aging, retiring parents and or young children, when you have a kid, all the above.
Joey.
Breaking up monopolies to address the affordability and cost of living crisis across every major industry in the United States. That's the top priority.
Junaid.
So pretty much very close to what Joey said. I was going to say affordability, but on top of that, I think childcare. I'm hearing at the doors a lot of people struggling with childcare, with working moms going back to work. So that's something I'm going to be on top.
Kina.
Reopening the Office of Violence Prevention and advocating for permanent funding. It got closed. The 40,000 deaths per year by way of guns are 40,000 deaths that are preventable.
Yep. All right. Last one. An extracurricular activity you did in high school. Could be music, could be sports, could be anything. Bushra.
Debate was my sport in high school. It was obviously very cool.
Yeah, me too. Joey.
Automotive technology, learning the basics of how to take care of a car.
Oh, all right. I like it. Junaid.
I also did automotive. I love fixing cars.
Okay, you guys are from the Midwest. In New Jersey, we didn't do any of that. Okay. All right, Kina.
I took Korean in high school. 안녕하세요.
Okay. Whoa. Okay. You got to check out Physical 100, Physical Asia. There's so many good Korean shows now. All right.
Yep.
And that's badass that you could understand it in the original Korean. All right, guys, this has been amazing. So first of all, I want to thank Marie Newman. I actually think a literal American hero. So she showed courage when it was super, super difficult. She paid a high price for it that others wouldn't pay. And she put this together for us and we love it. Thank you, Marie. We appreciate you so much. And to all the candidates, guys, we're gonna put the links to all their websites in the description box. So make sure you're checking that out. If you wanna find out more about them, go to their websites. And that's a great way to find out more. If you wanna support them, remember, they're not taking corporate PAC money. So when people act courageously like that, you gotta back them up, okay? Otherwise, we're never gonna be able to take back Congress. So Kina Collins, Bushra Amiwala, Joey Ruzovich, and Junaid Ahmed. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for joining us today on TYT.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, much love, everybody. We'll see you on Monday.
Okay.